Let's take a breath together. So our talk title this morning is Me and You Are We. You and I are we. Ernest Holmes, toward the end of his life, talked about his greatest fear is that we would slip into teaching science of mind as duality. And language gets in the way. It always does. Because Ernest Holmes constantly said throughout his writings that we're not individuals, that we're not separate, and yet language demanded that while he talked about how we each use it, he used the word individual. So if you're reading Ernest Holmes, you're like, well, wait, dude, which is it? Either we're individuals or we're not. Well, what we are is spontaneous, individualized expressions of one thing. Spontaneous, individualized expressions of one thing. And I've used it before, and I'll use it again, because it is the best example that I can come up with. This thing happens to the physical body here. Tiny little ball of identical cells. Spontaneously. Medical science, all of its advancements still can't explain it, which just I love. Right? But it's like this little huddle of cells all of a sudden goes, break! And everything differentiates. And perfectly identical cells suddenly know how to become a liver and an arm and a finger and a fingernail and which color of eyes. That fascinates me to the core. May I never get bored with that analogy. Right? The same thing happens in life. There's one field of energy. Energy, scientifically, is the potential to create. That's what it's defined as. So there's this field of pure potential. And at the thought, at the desire of creation, something new is spontaneously created. If you have somebody online that you can look to, if not, put it in the chat. Here in the room, look at your neighbor. You are a spontaneous creation. Tell each other that. You are a spontaneous creation. Yeah. Because that's what's true. See, somewhere in the heart of creation itself, it had a moment, a desire in its heart to experience its life uniquely as you. And it brought into being. Now that's pretty special in my book. When I let myself really feel the truth that I am an intentional, on purpose, one of a kind, never to be repeated desire in the heart of creation to experience its life as me. What else do I need? See, all of these earthly conditions really don't matter a whole lot at that point. The dividing line comes when I think I'm separate. The dividing line comes when I think that Rafe is something different than the divine. When I forget that I am it in form. Our teaching lends itself to be misinterpreted because we're responsible for our individualized experience. And sometimes we interpret that as we're only responsible for my experience, as if there's a separate my than you. Ernest Holmes constantly, there's no such thing as your mind and my mind, there's one mind. There's no such thing as you and me, there's one. And when we live in a world where we're surrounded by the effect, by the condition of separation, it's really kind of challenging to keep that in the forefront of our understanding. Especially, it may be different, but when people do stupid things, or things more accurately I assess as right? As I assure you have done things I thought were brilliant. Someone else assessed as stupid. And perhaps I do the same misassessment of other people. Perhaps sometimes I allow my human opinions to get in the way, and I deem someone else's choice stupid. And then I go further and I deem them to be wholly, completely, irreprehensibly stupid for having made it. Maybe it's just me, but I doubt it, because I've talked to some of you. We've had conversations. The story of the Good Samaritan is a good place to start. And most people just stop the story at somebody stopping to help another person. But what we oftentimes fail to recognize is the thing about the story of the Good Samaritan is that it was quite risky and illegal for the Samaritan to stop and help the person that he stopped. Because it was so divisive culturally that he could actually be punished for helping that human being. Different tribe, different belief system. See, this is the problem with divisiveness. This is the problem with separation, is that we begin to establish rules and belief systems that anchor our experience of separation and move us further and further away from the truth of our being, which is what it moves further and further away from an experience of wholeness. If we're to understand our teaching and really live it, we have to get past people's behavior. We have to see beyond divisiveness and exhibit the courage to stand in oneness. To know that even the people that hurt us the most are not separate from us. That they are a part of our body. And I have some experience with this. You know, as a child that experienced abuse in every form imaginable. It isn't easy to forgive. It isn't easy to move beyond the choices of behavior of other human beings and stand in the truth of oneness. But that's what's required. Because we either believe in oneness or we don't. Right? It's not a convenient thing. Sometimes I find us treating it that way. Oh, sure, I believe in oneness as long as you're in my political party. I'm one with everyone in my political party. I'm one with everybody who recycles in the same way I do. I am one with everyone who eats the same diet I eat. And when we're not there, we vilify each other. We jump on, too many of us jump on. Too many of us live on the victim-hero triangle. We love it. We make it a way of life. this is the part that's likely to really piss you off. If you're living on that angle, you are living a life of victimhood, because no one looks for a villain until they have decided they're a victim. Nobody needs a villain until they're a victim. Nobody needs a hero until they have consented to some level of complete abject powerlessness that says they no longer have the ability to care for themselves, that their power of choice has been deemed worthless, and they need someone outside of them to save them. Ain't a word of truth in it. Not a word. This idea that anybody is separate from us is the only lie that needs to be healed. The only one. Now, it comes in a lot of different packages. It wears a lot of costumes. It uses a lot of different words. But the lie is always the same. That you're separate. That you're separate. Now, I won't deny that sometimes I need a God outside of me. Sometimes I do. There's a movie from a while back called The Shack. Incredibly intense. Incredibly powerful movie. And God shows up for this young man in a lot of different forms. It's a journey father to understand what happened to his daughter, who was abducted and molested and murdered. When he gets back to Shack, it's all about come clear. This God who has shown up as a woman the whole movie shows up as a man. And he's like, wait a minute. I thought you were this. Why are you showing up as a man all of a sudden? And the response was, because today you need a father. Today you're going to need a father. And so perhaps a God, a spirit that is all things all the time can show up as whatever we choose it to show up as, whatever we need it to show up as in the moment, and yet we don't have to make it separate. We don't have to make it separate. We're really good at the headiness, the headiness of science of mind. And I think where our growth is as an organization, as a philosophy, is delving more deeply into the I-thou relationship, that personalized relationship. Now, yes, in the truth of oneness, it's absolutely the exercise of talking to yourself, right? It is. And I could ask how many people in this room talk to themselves, and somebody will say, I don't talk to myself. Really? Who'd you talk to? We all talk to ourselves. Every one of us. And perhaps if we begin to understand that in dialogue is with our trust self. That there's one self, the infinite, and that we are yet in form, and so is everybody else. And so perhaps every conversation you have is a conversation with yourself. Think about that. When you're in that, I am not them, who's them? Who is, in oneness, can we have a them? I don't think so. That requires separation. And so perhaps if we lean into oneness in a different way, if we lean into wholeness in a different way, then the behaviors become less of a focus. By no means do we ignore them. Ernest Holmes said in many different ways, we do not ignore condition. What we do is understand our power to change our experience of it. I don't control the weather. When I was back east, when my son passed away, there was a hurricane. And I was in service at CSL Asheville. And Dr. Barbara Waterhouse, was sharing that she was getting a plethora of emails requesting that she pray that the hurricane stop. And she's like, no, it's not my job. What I will pray for is that everyone experiencing the hurricane accesses the infinite intelligence within them to know how to exactly do that. I'll pray for that. I won't pray to control weather. That's not my job. That's science's job. That's the activity law. Right? So if we begin to understand what's ours, what's not ours, I have never had to change another being's mind since understanding this philosophy. That's not my job. The infinite gave us free will. Who am I? How much arrogance would it take for me as an individualized expression, for me relating from my humanness, to assume the authority to change your mind? Oh, good Lord. No. Creation, that is the one right. That is the one birthright. They can legislate it, but they can't take it. The greatest example of that, Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl, if you don't know who he was a man who grew up in a concentration camp in Nazi Germany. And if you want a really amazing book to read, Man's Search for Meaning. And there was a point where they had taken everything from Viktor Frankl, except his wedding band. They had taken his clothes. They had taken his humanity. They had taken his food. And they demanded his wedding ring. And he explains in the book that his process was to go within and choose to give it to them, so that it was choice. We not like the actions, but be really there, beloveds. There is no place where you stop using. None. That can't exist in creation, because every thought you have, every breath you breathe is a choice to create something. Pay attention. Create intentionally. I want to wrap up with this, and a lot of you know I'm a Bible guy. I don't relate to the Bible the way I was raised to relate to it, but it's an amazing library of books. It has some amazing wisdom in it, not the least of which, little humor aside, the phrase, don't get caught with your ass hanging out. Straight out of the Old Testament. Straight out of the Old Testament. There is a place in the Old Testament where the punishment for crimes of misdemeanor were to split an individual's trousers and send them out in public. Straight out of the Bible. Don't get caught with your ass hanging out. Just saying, I didn't write it, but I love that it's there. So it says this, Matthew book 25, verses 35 through 40. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you visited me. Then there was ask him, and this is Jesus that's talking. Lord, when did we see you hungry, feed you, or thirsty, and give you something to drink? Did we see you a stranger and take you in, or naked and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you? And the reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did to one of the least of these brothers of mine, relatives of mine, you did for me. We are one. We are one. Whatever you do, here, everywhere else, we do for the whole. Dare to live in wholeness and oneness. I dare you. Let's take this into prayer. As I recognize, as I recognize, as I know again in this physical realm the truth of oneness, I allow the human me to feel that, to experience that I-thou communion. I allow myself to experience the wholeness of the truth of being, the oneness. That there is no separation. That in truth there is me, no you, no us, no them. There is simply one. And I am that form. And what is true of me must be true of all creation. And so everywhere I look, I see the infinite. Everywhere I listen, I hear the infinite. Every breath is a breath of the divine. One, always one. And so I lift up each expression of humanity this morning, affirming, speaking into realization, being made real in each individualized expression of the one. An awakening to the magnificence of the one divine self. An awakening to the wholeness, to the preciousness, to the awe and wonder of oneness. I affirm, I claim, I demand an experience of that within each heart and mind. Knowing that as we move beyond behavior, as we hold sacred every creation, we bring humanity, we bring the physical into alignment with the truth of its being. Each expression exercising the birthright of voice to choose the sacred, to choose to see the sacred and profane as one in the same, to no longer be fooled spirits, to hold fully the conundrum of humanity and spirituality and oneness. So grateful that personal and know that it operates quite mechanically. That's the power of choice. And so I celebrate and I let that be. And I once again celebrate the power to choose over and over and over. And I invite you to join me as we say together. And so it is.